Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome to an episode of Member Spotlight, a podcast by Corporate Finance Institute, aka CFI, as most of you know it as. I'm your host, Neon, and today I'm joined by our lovely guest in blue here, Funmi Oriji. And she's here to talk about her journey into finance, the pivots, the lessons along the way, and any advice that she might give to those of us just starting out. Member Spotlight is one of my favorite series because we get to know people that we feel like we kind of see ourselves in and have that coffee chat that is made so accessible by the wonderful internet that we have here. And so before it used to be very challenging. If I wanted to meet Funmi, I'd have to go and meet her. I'd have to go to Texas to meet her. But today I'm here in Vancouver getting to chat with her where we have so much physical distance, but this is just like if we're chatting together. Um, so today, without further ado, I want to get to know you, and I want all of us to get to know your journey. How did you get started in how did you get started in your career? Did you have an interest in finance from the very beginning? Did you go to school for it? Did you have a parent who was in the industry? What got you interested in it?
Okay, good question. Thank you everyone for having me on the show. For everyone that ever gets to see the show, thank you so much for having me. So that was a very fantastic question. Funny thing is, I had no parents in finance. I myself had no business being in finance, or at least so I thought. I didn't think I wanted to do finance. I wanted to be a doctor. But thinking about it now that I'm an adult, I realized that I was really interested in finance because I come from a family of strong business women. My grandma was a big textile trader back in Nigeria. By the way, I'm from Nigeria. My grandma was a textile trader. And then I would go on holidays to be with my grandma, and then we'll go to the store, come back every day, and prepare accounts for the day, and will count all her money, all the money that she made. I mean, back in the days, my grandma would keep all her money at home. She didn't used to go to the bank. She was our own bank, right? So every day we had to count the money because we needed to be able to tell the difference from the amount of cash we had yesterday versus the amount of cash we have today. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I looked forward to that every day because once we get back from the store, get dinner, and then we just get seated in the living room and then count the money. The same money we counted yesterday, we'll count it again today, count the money again tomorrow. I mean, she had all the cash on her there. And then my mom as well was a businesswoman. And back in high school, when I go to, I was in a boarding system. So I would come back for the holidays. And then when I come for the holidays, the only function I had in my mom's business was the function of the cashier. So she would put me in front, I collect all the cash, account for it daily, what was sold, how much cash we have at hand, what expenses we had. I did all of that good stuff without any interest whatsoever in finance. I wanted to be a doctor. That was my plan. So I mean, going to college in Nigeria is not the easiest things to do. It's not the easiest of things to do. So
And
I
why would you
ended
say
up,
that is?
so it's not, we don't have as many colleges in Nigeria as you would find in Canada, in the US. So it meant that there was a lot more competition for the few colleges that we had. And then, of course, for the choice programs, Nigeria is a society that appreciates professional courses like medicine, law, accountancy. Those were the professions everybody wanted to be in, right? So there was a lot of competition, and there were only so many universities that you could go to. Right. So you needed to be extra smart. I mean, I think I was smart, but maybe I was just not extra smart. So I couldn't get into medicine. So after high school, I think I spent about 2 years plus trying to get into medicine, and then it just wasn't happening. So I told myself, you know what? I'm tired of being at home. I'm just going to go study mass comm or something else. Get me into school, get me into college, and then somewhere on the way out, I'll find my way to medicine. That was my plan. 17 or 18-year-old me, that was my plan. So I got into school to study philosophy. And then I ended up studying philosophy for 4 years, no changes. And then I
Did you love it?
graduated.
Did you enjoy it? Was it everything? Did you enjoy the degree?
I actually thoroughly enjoyed philosophy, to be honest. So, one of the things I enjoyed most about philosophy was logic. It felt like maths, where you write out statements and then write out like logical symbols showing the flow of the statements you've written. So you can form an argument. This is your premise. This is your conclusion. And then you can write out the symbols for all of that. It was very interesting to me, right? And it helped me to think critically, if I'm being honest, because every time you're thinking about something or talking about it, you then ask yourself if it makes, logical sense. Does it flow logically? Can I draw this conclusion based on this premise that I have and stuff like, so it helps you to do a lot of critical thinking, right? In addition to that, philosophy is a course that makes you ask a lot of questions. It's the open mind starter pack. As a philosophy student, you ask questions, a lot of questions, a lot of questions. And I think that that's something that has helped me throughout my career journey to where I am today, right? Because I've done a lot of different things. But every time I step into a new role or a new thing, I'm able to keep an open mind, right? And I think that's some training that came from studying philosophy, right? Because, there were a lot of different philosophers that we studied that all had different things to say to make sense out of everything everybody was saying that was mostly contradictory anyway. You needed to have an open mind. Otherwise, if you formed opinions around the thoughts of one philosopher, then you would not be open to listening to the other guy, right? So you needed to have an open mind at every point in time, right? So that helped me. I loved philosophy. I did very well in it. I I graduated top of my class. So it was good. It was really good. So my
And
plan
as a
was
fun,
to, yeah,
oh,
please,
sorry, I
please,
didn't mean
yeah.
to interrupt. As a fun fact, one
Hmm.
of our co-founders, who's now
Okay.
retired, the wonderful Scott Powell, he also did a degree in philosophy. He did a
I need to
master's in
find him.
philosophy. So
I need
it's
to find him.
it seems like it's kind of like an outlier in terms of someone that goes into finance, but I find,
Hmm.
just as you've alluded to, the critical thinking, they being open-minded, asking questions, those are all traits that I actually see so much of in Scott, and I think it's
Right,
so valuable to have in
right.
not just finance, but really just kind of any
Anyway.
working environment that requires critical thinking and an
Hmm.
open mind.
Hmm. 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 100%. So where was I?
So
So
after
I
you finished
studied
your philosophy
philosophy
degree,
and then I was still trying to go back to school to study medicine. Right. But at that point, my parents were like, well, we trained you through college. As of now, you need to start fending for yourself. I'm like, what? Well, I knew that going back to study medicine was going to be on my own account. So I told myself, okay, you know what? I'll get a job. Let me get a job and then maybe work for a couple of years, 1 year or two, make some money, and then go back to school to become a doctor was still my plan. So I went for, there's something we call the compulsory youth service in Nigeria. I went to youth service and then I met a couple of friends that were writing the ACCA exam. I don't know if you know about the ACCA exam. The ACCA exam is one of like the um, most prominent accounting and finance professional exams out there. So they were writing this certification at the time, and it just sounded really interesting to me. Like, okay, maybe I could try to sit for the ACCA exam myself, which I never did. I eventually did at some point later in my career, but at that point I did not. But then I was focused on finding a job. And luckily for me, I found a job with KPMG in
Mhm.
Nigeria. So KPMG would bring you on, regardless of whatever background you have. So they would bring you on and train you to become an accountant. Right. So I
And so this
applied
was your
for the
first
job.
step really into the working industry, right? Just
Yeah,
general professional.
general professional. Right. So I joined KPMG. I applied for the role, went through the interviews. And I remember one of my interviews with a senior partner at the time. He asked me a question saying, you studied philosophy. You're coming to work in an accounting firm. Why should I hire you? And I said to him, well, one of the things that I got out of my philosophy degree is the ability to keep an open mind and to ask questions. So I'm like, if you're bringing me into audit, you can rest assured that I would ask all the questions that there is to be asked. I'm going to come in with an open mind, and I think I'm going to do an excellent job. Your accountants will come in thinking, or like the traditional accountants, people with accounting degree, will come in thinking they know everything that there is to know. But you know that we work. I mean, so studying accounting and working in accounting are two different things, right? Because we work, it's not always white and black. So I told him, your accounting people will come in thinking that they know it all because, I mean, they've studied accounting for 4 years. I don't know accounting, but I'm able to think critically. I'm able to ask the right questions. I'm able to keep an open mind. So you can trust me to bring me in. Anyway, long story short, I joined KPMG, and that's how life started. I worked in audit for 7 years in total. I did my accountancy training for Nigeria. It's called the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Nigeria. That was my formal finance training. And then eventually I went to do the ACCA, which I haven't still finished for whatever reason. I have just one paper left. And then I came to the US at some point in there, did the CPA qualification in the US, went to business school to get my MBA in finance. And yeah, the rest they say is history. I've worked in finance, strategy, and that's how I found my way generally into finance.
But that's such a huge. So I'm so curious. Like, how did you get from being in Nigeria to where you are in the U.S. today? Was there like a planned journey, or were there any kind of fun surprises during those years? I could I could see a lot of our CFI members that might also be in Nigeria and aspire to be where you are today. I'd be curious. How'd you make that leap?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely not planned. So my first exposure to international work was at KPMG in 2017. I think it was December of 2017. I got selected to participate in something we call global mobility opportunities, right? So when you are like, I don't want to say a high performer, but maybe a high performer. If you're doing good job in Nigeria, as part of the opportunities to grow you and make you like a better professional, they provide you an opportunity to go to an international office to work. That was December of 2017. So I got the opportunity to go to the US. So I was in the US from January of 2018 to March of 2018. I worked in Kansas City and St. Louis in Missouri. That was my very, very first exposure to business generally outside of Nigeria. Other than things that I read on the news, things that I saw on the news, I really didn't know how businesses work, especially in a place like the US. So that assignment was my first exposure to international business, international accounting, just how things work outside of Nigeria. That was my first experience. And it was very fascinating to me because American companies are way bigger than Nigerian companies. You know, I audited a company that is probably like times 10 or times 20 of my biggest clients back in Nigeria. You know, there was just a lot to learn. There was a lot to know. So, for example, one of the things I found really fascinating was controls testing as part of the audit. We test controls back in Nigeria as well, but it's not a requirement, right? So, it's not as what's the best way to say this so that I don't make it look like we don't test controls in Nigeria? We do. I promise you, we do. We test controls, but it's a requirement in the US to test controls around financial reporting. You know, so because it's a reporting requirement, there's a lot more attention to that, and just the level of work that I got to do, asking questions around processes and the controls that drive or guardrail those processes. It was just like a lot of fun things. You know, the exposure was next to none. You know, auditing a big company, meeting with people from all over the world, doing things I had never really done before in my career. I found it very fascinating, you know, and I started to, when I went back to Nigeria, I really wanted to continue to stay in Nigeria, but at the same time, I started to look out for like global opportunities, you know, like more opportunities to be anywhere else, maybe the UK or the US. I just wanted to get like some, international exposure in addition to what I
Yeah,
had.
broaden your horizons. Someone with an open mind, you have an open heart, you have
Do
open
you get it?
everything. So you kind of
Yeah,
just want to explore the world.
exactly. Exactly.
And
So, sorry, I thought you wanted to say
oh,
something.
oh yeah. So I'm curious, like at this point in your career, if we're going back to when you were at KPMG in Nigeria, I get the impression that you're very humble, but clearly you're a very strong-willed woman, hardworking, high performer. When
Thank
you
you.
have the opportunity to go over to the US, is that when you kind of decided, okay, maybe I don't want to be a doctor? I seem to be doing well in what I'm doing right now. Is there a point in that chapter of your life where you decided, okay, I'm going to move the doctor thing to the side because you decided to pursue your MBA, which is also not a cheap endeavor. Like it's pretty expensive to do an MBA program.
Okay, so I think I said a lot of things in a short. And I mean, I lost a lot of details. Yes, so thank you for taking me back there 100%. In my first year as an auditor, I loved what I did. Like, I loved the work. It was super stressful. I worked a lot of late nights, even in my first year, but I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed the work. And I saw a future there. I saw myself becoming a partner at KPMG. That was my dream. And I'm like, oh, this is super cool too. Nobody has to be a doctor. Like these guys are as cool as doctors, if not cooler than doctors. So I'm like, okay, being a doctor, nah, bye. I'm done. I'm moving on to something else. So that's how I changed my mind about being, a doctor. I was fascinated by the leaders that we had. They were super smart. I mean, these are people that when they talk, you're just there looking at them like, oh my God, how are people this smart? So I really admired them a lot and I wanted to be like them. So it occurred to me at that point that, I mean, I don't think I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to appear smart. That's not why. I wanted to
Yeah.
be a doctor for a different reason. But at that point, it appeared to me you can have an impact without being a doctor. I felt like the biggest point of impact, or I mean, that's the way I thought about it. Like the biggest point of impact was like saving people's lives. People walk up to you and then you're able to help them overcome whatever health challenge that they have. I felt like that had to be like the biggest way to make an impact. But with more experience, more exposure, meeting new people, doing new work, I realized, okay, you could actually make impact without necessarily being a doctor. I saw how my leaders did it. I saw the amount of respect that they commanded with our clients and how they helped guide our clients around like their financial reporting and all that good stuff. So I told myself, okay, then you can actually have an impact without necessarily being a doctor. So that's how I dumped my doctor dreams to chase finance.
And then when you went and did the MBA, so I find a lot of people that are in the stage of our career where they've had a couple of years of work experience,
Mhm.
and they're the kind of, I guess the not the impetus, but the motivation for an MBA often, from my experience, has been you either want to move to a new country, have a big geographical reset, or you want to switch careers, period. And people seem to do it for those two main reasons. For you, what was your main reason for doing an MBA? When you were in the program, how did you enjoy the program? And was it everything that you expected? Did you have a goal going in? And
Mhm.
just how did you end up um, finishing the degree and then going into your next role? So a lot of loaded questions.
No, 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 it's totally fine. I'll try my best to answer all. So the first question, how did I make a decision to go get my MBA? So I eventually got an opportunity to move to KPMG San Francisco from KPMG Nigeria. And I did I did 5 years plus, almost 6 years in Nigeria. And I did almost 2 years in the US. So all my audit experience put together is a little above 7 years. At that point, I was just tired. I
Yeah.
was exhausted with the busy seasons, late nights, and I just wanted a break. I didn't think I was going away completely from audit, but at that point, I wanted a break. I wanted to do something else. So I started to look outside for opportunities, and I saw that the best I could get were going to be like accounting roles, like financial reporting roles, which are not bad in themselves, but I wanted something that involved a lot more strategic thinking, where you have a seat at the table, you're able to contribute into how the business works. Accounting and financial reporting is you're reporting on things that have happened. I wanted to be able to contribute to the company in a forward-looking manner where I'm involved in, how we make decisions. I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to influence the leaders in terms of numbers and all the good stuff. So I decided I was going to go do financial planning and analysis, FP&A, pretty much, or any other thing that is finance, investment banking, just anything else that is not financial reporting and accounting, because I felt like I had enough experience in that
Mm-hmm.
from my audit years. So I started to look out and I realized that to get like a management level role in FP&A, with the experience that I had, I needed an advanced degree. And what better degree to get than an MBA? There was no point getting a finance degree by itself or
Exactly.
accounting degree by itself. The MBA was just the perfect degree that I needed because it had finance, it had strategy, it had like investments. It's just the big bucket of everything. He had sales, he had marketing, just a good way to get like a complete overview of the whole business. Because I mean, as an auditor, luckily, or as a consultant generally, when you go to companies, you get like a broad view because
Mm-hmm.
they walk you through the business. You see the operation side, you see sales side, you see everything. So I had an understanding of how businesses work. But the MBA was just the perfect degree to bring all of that experience, tie it all together. So that's why I went to get the MBA in order to have an advanced degree in addition to my experience to be able to get like a manager level FP&A role. And then your next question was, did I
How
enjoy
did
my
you,
MBA?
yeah, how did you enjoy the program? I find for generally anyone going to an MBA, the one key the sign of a good experience I find is that people always say I met some amazing lifelong friends there, people that are going to be not just friends in my network but people I hope to work with in the future, build business together with. How was the MBA program for you? Did you come out with it with a lot more different experiences than you had anticipated?
So for my MBA, I echo what you said people say about meeting lifelong friends. That's very correct. I think my best friends in this current phase of my life are from my MBA program. So I met like really amazing people that I'm currently doing life with, and I hope to, continue to do life with even into the future. And beyond my friends from my school, I met like other MBA friends. There's the way we all have this like MBA community. You're not in the same school, but you're all kind of like MBAs from the same year. So I have friends like that as well that didn't exactly go to my school, but all of us are part of like a bigger MBA community. And then in addition to making friends, my MBA was very practical, right? So there's this thing called experiential learning in
Mhm.
my school where you provide actual consultancy to businesses or government agencies. As part of my MBA, I worked for an agency that is affiliated with the government of Ecuador. They call them the financial clusters of Ecuador. And it's made up of banks, payment companies like Visa, MasterCard, other financial institutions just coming together and looking for a way to improve Ecuador as a financial center. So think of London as a financial center, New York as a financial center, Singapore as a financial center. So they were trying to, look for the same opportunities that those other financial centers have for Ecuador, right? So I had the opportunity to work with that group as part of my MBA program, advising them on things that we see that helped shape London, New York, Panama, Singapore as financial centers. So the work was really study those other countries, see what they did right, and then advise that to my clients, who then, pushes the idea to the government of Ecuador. That was a very interesting thing that I did. I also
And
was
that seems
part
to really
of,
go into your idea of impact. That sounds like
exactly.
that would be a wonderful impact opportunity as well.
100%. Well, I mean, I would never have thought I would do anything with Ecuador. Ecuador was not, it wasn't even on my list of countries I
That
wanted
wasn't
to
on your map at
visit,
that point,
right?
yeah.
Right. I knew next to nothing about Ecuador, and then getting involved at that level where you really had to study the economy of Ecuador, see how things are done, what's the ease of doing business, for example, in Ecuador, what tax incentives do they have? Getting all of that knowledge was really enriching for me. And that's one fantastic thing I came out of my MBA with. And then there was the Insight program that I was a part of as well during my MBA, where it was doing the same thing, providing advisory to small businesses. So I worked with this small business owner that was into fitness, for new moms. So she does like exercises and stuff,
Oh
like
my God,
gym
something I would
stuff,
be into. I'm gonna have to ask you
right?
about this later.
Right. So she was into like this exercise and fitness thing for new moms, and she was solely online from the pandemic. So she was looking for ways to break out and have like a first brick and mortar store. Right. So I worked with her, with another student, of course. We worked with her to help her design a go-to-market strategy for opening a first physical store. And it was really, really satisfying to see her actually open the first physical store. Right. So those were really exciting things that I did in my MBA that made the whole experience worthwhile. So I was not just going to classes, I was adding value. And then one fantastic thing that we did in my MBA as well, we traveled the globe. We went to Europe, we went to Spain, we went to France, we went to Chile, as part like to do like some field courses. So we actually did explore businesses in those places. I know that we visited like wineries in
As
France.
one has to do when one is in Europe.
Right, right. So I mean, those were really fun things to do in an MBA program. And again, back to my friends. Shout out to my friends from my MBA program. Love you
And
guys.
you've already built at to that point in your life so much global experience. Like you've started wanting to explore the world and you have already now been through so many places.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
on top of that, after your MBA, you have, for those of you who haven't seen Funmi's LinkedIn, you have a lot of really big, major US corporations and employers on your resume. A lot of places that I know that our listeners who are listening right now would aspire to work at.
mm.
Um, Take us through a couple of the next steps that you've had in your career up to where you are today, because I would love to hear how you've moved through such amazing large companies.
Yay, let's just say I'm hot cake. Okay, 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 okay. I'm not the next best thing. Oh, sorry. I'll this that thing. I'm not the next best thing after sliced bread. Okay. Um, in terms of working at the corporations that I've worked at, so after my MBA, I immediately joined McKinsey and Company. And that's been, I think at that point, that was like 10 years coming, or nine, thereabouts, because I tried to join McKinsey in 2013 back in Lagos. And the McKinsey entrance test back then had to be one of the most difficult entrance tests to pass anywhere, right? And I studied for it, wrote the test, and passed. Got into the interviews. I went through the first stage of interview, and then I think it was at the second stage that I didn't make it through. But I really, really wanted to work for McKinsey.
It's very rigorous. I have a friend that's a partner there now, and I just remember it was like a classic multiple rounds, lots of
Mhm,
brain
mhm,
teasers,
mhm.
lots of critical thinking. It's a tough
Honestly,
place
and
to
at the
be at.
time that I was interviewing for it, to be honest, I didn't really know much about what they did, if I'm being very honest. We all know that they're like a strategy consulting firm, they help you with. But once I got into like casing, and because it's part of the process, right? So you learn how
Yeah.
to solve business cases. Once I got into the casing part of it, I became super interested because I'm like, wow, these guys solve really cool problems. Like you're seeing like a real business problem, right? Okay, so my profit is going down by so margin, and then I need to bring it back up. over the next 3 years period, like very specific problems, and they develop like a strategy. This is what you should do: increase prices, reduce cost, blah blah blah. I mean, I'm sure you know all of that, but it was really interesting. I saw an opportunity for impact there, so I really was interested in working in McKinsey. Unfortunately, that fell through, so I told myself I was going to stay back in my current job, and I had two plans for my current job: make partner, which was fascinating to me. I wanted to make partner, but if I ever got tired, my plan was going to be to go to business school and then try to work for McKinsey. By the time I went to business school, McKinsey was no longer on the radar for me. I wasn't trying to go to McKinsey till McKinsey visited my school. And I'm like, oh my God, McKinsey.
You're here. It's
You're
time.
here, So I'm like, okay, maybe. Yeah, I think I should go to McKinsey. Meanwhile, I said I was looking for an FP&A role. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had landed an FP&A internship with Microsoft at that time. But still, maybe call me Oliver Twist. I always want to try everything. I explore everything that is in front of me. I never let anything go. So I'm like, I should go to Microsoft, but McKinsey though,
But
McKinsey.
McKinsey, we've had a previous
You
relationship.
get so I went through their process again, and it just brought back a lot of memories for me
It
doing
was
it
like a warm hug.
13. So I remembered like the errors that I made back then. I just, did things differently this time around at my during my McKinsey process, and I got an offer. Right, I spoke to people, did the casing. I had great friends. Again, shout out to my friends. We cased together. They got me ready, and I passed the interviews. So I'm like, okay, McKinsey it is. But I told them, you know what, McKinsey, I love you. I really want to be with you. But I need to go to Microsoft as well because I already said yes to Microsoft for my internship. So I'm like, I'll go to Microsoft and then I'll come back to McKinsey. And at the end of the day, it all ties up very well for me because one cap you need to have on as a finance person is strategy. If you're going to succeed as a finance person, you need to be able to think strategically. You need to understand your business and you need to know how whatever it is that you're doing, how it fits into the overall strategy of the company. So it was really valuable experience for me. I'm glad that, I did a bit of strategy at McKinsey, which I have now left, by the way, and now I'm going to Amazon to continue in finance. So let's just say I'm a finance girly.
Oh my gosh. So you have like these huge names that a lot of people that are listening, especially kind of coming out of university, whether it's an undergrad program or a graduate degree program, people love to have the idea of stacking these big employers on their resume.
Mhm.
For someone that is aspiring to go to McKinsey, what would you say was your biggest takeaway from your time there? Because it's a really big employer that a lot of people aspire to have. What do you think you learned the most at McKinsey while you were there?
One thing I learned the most at McKinsey, and I'm still learning, is being very, very structured in my communication, whether it's spoken communication or written communication. There's a way to think at McKinsey. There's a way to speak at McKinsey. I learned to, if I'm going to have a meeting with you, these are the three things that I want to discuss. One, two, three, boom, boom, boom. So we're not dancing about the bush, and then that structure, it helps me even in my thinking, I'm able to prioritize correctly, and then communicate better. I'm clearer in my communication. So that's one thing for sure. And then secondly, is just still tied to the first one in terms of structured thinking. It helps you to think thoroughly in terms of maybe strategy formation, right? Because as a McKinsey person, you would consider all the alternatives, at least all the possible alternatives, right? And then you can make a list of those and then start to walk down that list in order of priority. You are more structured, you are more thorough, right? So those are things that I learned amongst a lot of other things. My analysis is better at McKinsey. My PowerPoint making, my page making in PowerPoint is definitely better from McKinsey. So, I mean, there's a lot to learn at McKinsey. McKinsey. Like,
Yeah. I
right. There's a
find that
lot of,
generally people that have gone through the major consulting firms, whether it's McKinsey, BCG, Bain, or the main investment banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, whatever the local ones are. For example, when I went through the investment banking years, the thing that people take away the most, and what I'm getting from you, is that those type of employers give you a lot of polish, a
Mhm,
lot of like very, very structured ways of communicating clearly, being able to do critical thinking and analysis in a really thorough
100%.
fashion. And those are
100%.
things that you really build on so much for the rest of your career.
For
So
the
it's like
rest
as
of
soon
your
as you
life.
have one of those big names, those big employers, it makes it really, it sets you up for such a strong start for the rest of your career.
Right. And in
Now,
addition to that, I think one important skill I took away as well was problem solving. Just the ability to tear a problem apart, and then get to the root cause and try to deal with the problem from the root cause. And, it's very helpful because even if it's an ambiguous issue, there's that confidence you have to take it on, even if it's ambiguous, and start to tear it apart in bits, till you get to the real issue, right? That's such
and you're
an
reminding me of
important
a
skill.
doctor here from me because it's just like you don't want to treat the symptoms, right? You want to locate and treat the cause of the issue.
Yeah, so that's a valuable skill that I definitely took away from McKinsey.
And then from McKinsey to where you are today, what are
hmm
take us through the chapters that you went there. And then I would love to talk about where your future is afterwards.
Whoa. I think I would answer the future question first.
Okay, yeah.
I have found that I love finance. I asked myself at the point when I was leaving McKinsey, I asked myself a lot of critical questions, right? Because in my time at McKinsey, I got to do like a lot of different things, which could make you feel like you can work in operations, you can work in marketing, you can work in strategy, but where exactly? I don't want to. I've done more than 10 years in my career at this point, and I feel like this is the point where I need to focus. Focus doesn't mean I can't pivot. If I wanted to pivot into strategy or something, I can make that pivot and then just stay there. But I needed to ask myself like very fundamental questions. Where do you want to build a career going forward? And after a lot of brainstorming sessions, I found finance is the place. I really love finance. I want to be in finance. And then in the new era that we're in with finance, finance is no longer the back end. Finance used to be the back end where you were just concerned about the numbers, about the figures. Luckily, going forward, finance is a lot more different. There's a lot of, finance is a lot more dynamic going forward. You are interested in the front end, you are interested in the business, operations, you should know sales, pretty much everything, right? So I'm like, okay, finance is like that best place to first of all bring all the experiences that I have together. I have accounting experience, I have finance experience, I have strategy experience, I have a little bit of operations because I did like supply chain transformations back in McKinsey. So all that experience, I believe finance is that place that ties it up very well for me. And then going forward, I'm able to carry all my experience still easily in finance, right? As a finance person, you can find a place through business partnership. You can find a place to contribute to operations, marketing, HR, whatever, right? You're relevant in any business. So I told myself, okay, finance it is. That was my decision that going forward, I am going to continue to build on this career in finance. Where do I see myself in the future being a finance leader? There are a lot of mentors when it comes to finance leadership. But yeah, that's where I'm looking at being a finance leader, contributing to shaping the finance and strategy of organizations. And then somewhere there, I want to do like consulting on my own to help small businesses. small businesses that need the kind of guidance that we give to like the larger corporations, but cannot afford McKinsey, right? They need people that have gone through the McKinsey system, that have the knowledge base, that can then, and I feel like that's one of the ways that these bigger corporations too pay it forward, is one of the ways that they give to the smaller firms that cannot afford them. You train people to work for you and then they can go with the skills to help other people. So I see myself doing that too somewhere in the future. But yeah, to answer your question, the future is finance. This is where I want to be. And then, what was the other question?
What are you going to be doing in so you're starting a new role, I want to say
Mhm.
like next week.
Yeah.
What are you doing in your next role? Like, or well, you're not in it yet, so you don't know exactly. But what are you going to be doing at the new spot that you're in?
So I know it's a business partnership role, a finance role, but partnering with the operation side of the business. I know that much, right? And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to work with the operations guys, the people that do the day to day. I'm excited to work with them and then just provide, finance perspectives to what they do on a day, because it's very easy to get carried away doing what you do that you've always done and has delivered results to you, right? But having someone come in with an outside perspective, especially as it relates to finance, I think is always like a good deal for any company. So that's what I'm going to be doing, just providing finance partnership, I would say, to like the operations guys at the new company that I'm going to.
And I just also, so this is going to be on a more personal note. I get the impression, and I think it's very clear that you are a very hardworking, goal-oriented, successful, strong woman. What is something that you are proud of that people would not see on your LinkedIn, for example? Something that people would have to know you for.
Oh my God, that's such a difficult question. Okay, so first of all, I want to address being called strong. I heard somebody say something um this week that when you call yourself strong, it gives people, other people, the impression that you can handle everything on your own and you don't need help. So I've told myself, no, I don't want to be regarded as strong in that way going forward, right? I do what I need to do. I don't necessarily think I'm strong in that way. I just do what needs to be done. Maybe resilient.
The
I would,
Brazilian, I was going to use
yeah,
that word too.
yes, resilient. I don't take no for an answer. I don't give up. I chase what needs to be chased. I do what I need to do, pretty much. And then in terms of what was the other question? You said this will be edited out, right? I'm just
Yeah,
making
yeah, yeah. So I
what was
think
the
you
other
are,
question?
if I'm not going to use the word strong, I would say resilient and very resourceful.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if often the first thing that people get to know us by, especially in like a professional context, is LinkedIn. You see what's on their profile, what employers this person's been at, and then you feel like you have a kind of a pretty good idea of what they're going to be like.
hmm
But for behind the scenes, what's something that you're really proud of that we wouldn't know by seeing your LinkedIn profile and your resume generally?
Okay, so I'm proud of a lot of things that you don't see on my LinkedIn profile or my resume, but one that I'm most proud of is how much of a people person I am. You know, I'm that supportive friend. I'm the caring daughter, the sister that looks out for her siblings. I'm that good niece. I'm just a people person generally. I love people, right? Maybe that's why I wanted to be a doctor. I
Oh,
really do.
yeah, that's why you want to be a doctor, of
Right?
course.
I really do love people. I love to be there for people. I love to be reliable. I want to be that person when you look around for help, you can't immediately find help, then you find me. It gives me some sort of satisfaction to be that person for the people in my space or people generally. So, and I mean, I don't think that's something you would find on my LinkedIn profile.
And just out of curiosity, where did you learn that from? Did you have a mentor or like role model that helped kind of bring this out in you? Because that's such a special thing.
Well, so I am my mother's last born, and I was separated from my mom at the age of 17. So I've had to live with different people. And in most of those places, I'm the youngest. And in the African society, as a young person, you tend to the older ones, right? So you run their errands, you just tend to them. I think that's where I got that from, living with a lot of older people where you're, I won't call it responsible for them, but you tend to them is the right word to use, right? You run their errands, just make sure that they're fine. I think that's where I picked that up, and instead of being upset about it, I enjoyed living with the older people that I lived with. Right. I just enjoy when there's a lot of people in a place. So there's a lot of people living in my house. There's a lot of people that I roll with, that I work with. Funny enough, I'm an introvert, but I love people still.
No way.
Yes, yes. I love my
You have to be the
space.
most extroverted introvert
I
then.
agree. I totally agree because I do love my space. I really do love. I love to have people around. So there's like 10 of us in this house, but you are not in my immediate space. I can just hear your
Mm,
voice. I know that you're somewhere there in the house. I'm happy. It makes me happy. I check on you from time to time. I see you're doing fine. 100% okay. But I don't want you in my face. I don't want you in my space.
yeah.
Right. So
So that has been an amazing conversation. I think that we
thank
have
you.
covered so many parts of a creative. This has just been so uplifting and motivating for me. So I could only imagine what it's going to be for everyone else. Thank you so much, Funmi, for sharing your story and your insights with us today. It's been an
Thank you for
absolute
having me.
pleasure having you
Thank
on
you
the
for
show.
having
And to our listeners tuning in, we will be back with more inspiring stories soon from the world of finance. But until then, we will see you all next time.
All right.